Welcome to the very special edition of Surge's Coffee Talk. Well, I guess it's Coffee Talk with Surge. I already screwed this up here at RSA this year. I'm very excited. We've got the whole team here. We're going to be together for the next 2 to 3 weeks here in America anyway, and we have a very special guest coming all the way from Australia with the most soft Australian accent that I think I've ever heard, Shannon Davis.
Hello.
Yes, that's
Good day.
Good day.
Good
There we
day.
go. Not enough coffee. You're still recovering from the
Nope.
jet lag.
Exactly.
Our format today, as always, we try to keep it to about 25 to 35 minutes. We're going to discuss some of the news of the day. We're going to go over some of the events that we have coming up for .conf. Then we'll be going into our 60-second charity challenge. We're going to talk about what we've seen this week at RSA. We all have a lot of different perspectives. Shannon's been coming since 1999. And then we have Audra. This is your very first time at RSA. And there's some interesting aspects of what RSA means. So we're going to talk about that and then take it away. So speaking of taking away, Audra, what news do we have today to talk about?
Sure. So on Tuesday, there was a new advisory. This was a joint advisory from CISA, the FBI, and the NSA. And this one basically detailed how China state-sponsored threat actors are basically exploiting known vulnerabilities in order to create basically a large-scale network of compromised infrastructure across public and private sectors. So this includes major telecommunications companies and network service providers. And according to this advisory, these actors, they're scanning networks, they're using frameworks like routersploit, and they're performing SQL injections on a Radius server in order to get admin credentials, which they can then use to exfiltrate data. So U.S. agencies have also observed these threat actors basically listening in on network defenders' accounts. So that way, if they're changing their strategy, they can adjust and so that they remain undetected, which is interesting. So this advisory, it has a whole list of the CVEs that they're exploiting, along with some commands that they're using on different servers. And of course, the mitigations here, the patch management.
Patch your stuff.
Yeah, if you have end-of-life infrastructure, you want to replace that.
Maybe.
Yeah, basic hygiene, as always.
So a couple things I like about this. One, great job again by CISA. We had a fascinating conversation a couple days ago where we were talking about, CISA has focused a lot on vulnerabilities, but there's also a lot of TTPs that people have to deal with. And this is a good example where they kind of lined this out. I think this is now the second or third alert that I've seen this year. The first was China or Russia. We've seen this. Now we have China. Mick, you used to focus on China as a day job, right? So what are your thoughts about this? Is a line completely new, right? This is
I've never
absolutely
heard of anything like this happening in
Never.
the past 15 years of my professional career. It's just so new. But I think it just goes to show when I've actually had some conversations this week where, hey, has APT dwindled? Are we seeing less of it? And the answer is no. I just think as we notice our tooling gets better on the defensive side, but I think on the offensive side, the actors that are at that sponsored level, the tooling they're using is getting a lot better. We're detecting something that came out, maybe was used back April. So the op is over, and we're just seeing the exhaust from it. And I think we're going to see more of that because the threat actors that are out there are getting better.
We used to have a saying when I had a real job and did DoD sort of work that you didn't detect you detected the Iranians with snort. You found the Chinese APTs in your basically Splunk logs, and then you found out about the Russian APTs when
In
the
the news.
Washington Post or the FBI told you.
Yes.
I think that's changed a little bit, but not Iran
much.
has gotten much more sophisticated.
Yes.
I think there's been APTs kind of going down through, and we were talking about this before as well, and you've had some experience in your time around the block.
And I even say like the APT behavior is starting to kind of morph into other people. People are learning from the APT. So ransomware crews doing a lot of APT type behavior because it works.
Yeah.
And so just
And who says they're not the same people?
Probably are. So Vlad has gone and done something, his moonlighting job. But it's something that we're seeing a lot more of that stuff because it just works.
Well, we saw, back in my former life, you saw a lot of that with Chinese threat actors, where you worked under the MSS umbrella during the day, but at night you were a contractor doing X.
Right.
And I think that makes it really hard for at least the nerds among us who play in the attribution game. It just becomes impossible at that point. From a defensive perspective,
I only blame Ugly Gorilla. I think it's only Ugly Gorilla who does all the work.
You can't say his name. Just don't say his name. We get in trouble for that. I think for me, the sad part, but not sad part, is the recommended mitigative strategies. hey, patch your stuff. It's end of life. Maybe you should get rid of it. These are the things that we've been harping on for so long, and that's the strategy because it works. So why hasn't it caught on?
Why hasn't it caught on?
Because it's hard.
Is
It's
it
hard.
No, it's not shiny, so it's not something that's like new and flashy. That it's the basics
Right.
work, and still keep on recommending it. And as long as I think we keep on doing
This
it.
is a perfect segue to our next story.
Speaking of shiny,
But one of the things that I keep hearing about is APTs are not using 0 days as much. They're using misconfigurations. So there are no new 0 days. Is that correct, Audra?
Well, we had 2 last week.
We had 2 last week.
Apparently
Never
not.
mind, apparently.
So I don't know if we actually on Friday we saw a new blog from Velexity, right? They put out this blog, the security researchers there, about an unauthenticated remote code execution 0 day, and this was being actively exploited on Atlassian Confluence server and data center instances in the wild. So actively happening, and quick turnaround. Actually, Atlassian
Really
put out a fix
great job by
within
them.
24
Yep.
hours, which was great. But organizations with vulnerable instances should still approach this as if it's been attacked, right? Indicators of attack, what to look for. And actually, Splunk Surge, we put together a blog post kind of listing these indicators and also including some.
almost as fast as Atlassian
Yep.
had their patch. That blog by us came out. I thought it was a really good
Yeah.
effort.
Yep.
So
We got that in just a couple hours. We had that out with some threat hunting searches using Splunk. So
And then our threat research team actually published something, I believe, the next Monday with analytic stories for enterprise security content update, which is awesome. But then we also had a second O-Day pop up this week that you worked on.
Yep.
yes. Do you want to talk about Follina?
Talk a little bit about Follina. So that was a fun name. Really, Follina with the MSDT 0 day around. People were talking about that being only Office products, but we found out later that it wasn't. It was things like Teams and other potential avenues, vectors into this 0 day. And really, the one interesting thing that came around was even just previewing these documents. So you didn't have to open a Word document to actually be exploited. You could just preview if they named it, RFT. So that's very tough for them to do, and that would actually
Work.
it would work. And I was just talking to people about this today that how dangerous these mechanisms can be. So we got some content out on that pretty quickly. I think that fell within my time zone to do a blog on that. And it was an interesting one, and I think there's a lot of defenses and detections out for that now. Patching, I'm not so sure about yet, but I'm sure they'll get that out and get fixes for it.
Yeah, we're still waiting on an official fix on that. But there was also a report from Proofpoint just the other day about QBot affiliates exploiting this also, that they're observing using Office documents. It's a docx. So that could be a phishing.
Right.
So something to watch out for there. And basically with this vulnerability, it's this MSDT, it's the Microsoft diagnostic tool.
Yep.
And the exploit allows it to basically run PowerShell right in your environment.
It could be anything, really,
Yeah.
and it's something that's the danger here. And we saw a lot of these different protocol schemas, potentially being used, and so there's a number of others that may potentially crop up in the future as well.
Right.
So it's trying to look through and see. And this was actually reported back, it was even years ago, potentially as a vector to use. And like usual, we ignore it, and then it pops up, and then we scramble. So there may be other things in there that we have to watch out for.
And I think there's something here for those watching who are interested in how Surge responds, how Splunk responds to events. One of the metrics that we use to determine if we actually do a response is if there's proof of concept, active exploitation, and if there is or is not a patch available at the time. So these are the things that we look at, recommend you look at as well for your own threat modeling. In this case, just a really wonderful job by Atlassian. I think they crushed it. Volatility is a phenomenal company. If you've never looked them up, I'm not a paid sponsor. I'm not wearing their shirt, but I think they do great research, great work, and they're responsible disclosures. And they didn't make up a silly name for their vulnerability. So well done them.
I mean, if they would like to sponsor us, I would welcome Steve. And
Yeah, we can have volatility cups right here.
I will have Adair's picture right here.
T-shirt, I want a
it'd be
hat.
great.
It'll be great. Is anything else changed in the world, Audra?
Well, ransomware is still
Oh, yeah,
happening, so
ransomware.
that
I
has
heard
not
that.
gone away.
Cool.
Yeah, we actually saw another advisory. This was when CISA and a bunch of U.S. agencies, they put out an advisory about Karakurt. It's a data extortion group. They're actually not known to encrypt systems. Instead, they just steal the data and then threaten to auction it off or release it publicly in exchange for ransom. So basically, this advisory has technical details and indicators of compromise. And I also saw a bunch of security researchers actually outside of CISA have attributed Karakurt as a branch of Conti, which is interesting. So there's a connection there potentially. So something to watch for, and there's some good information because I hadn't heard much about Karakurt before that.
We're going to talk about RSA here later on, but one of my reoccurring themes of folks I've talked to, because Shannon wrote up all this incredible research. He and I have been doing quite a bit of talking about it, and so we're getting a lot of questions. And one of the big things that came up, I've had folks ask, is, are you seeing more of the extortion versus ransomware? And I wouldn't have said yes before this week, but I think it is a rising area.
Then I would even say that it's happened where it's still dual. Now these ones where they're only doing extortion versus ransomware, and can you even call it a ransomware crew if they're just extorting you? Like with that, I mean, they're not encrypting, but they're still ransoming something. Right. And the interesting thing around this is going from Conti. Did they potentially use Conti source code that was leaked to now?
Who is Conti?
Yeah, who is Conti?
Well, that's the point I'm making is Conti is like anonymous now, right?
I think all the ransomware games are.
Well, affiliates could be all over, right?
Yeah.
They could work for multiple
they're affiliated
groups.
with Conti.
Tell me more,
What does
Audra.
that really mean?
What do you do on the weekends?
That's the point. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
well, anyway, we have a couple events we want to get to first. So running down the list, we have a lot happening this month, RSA right now. And next week, we have SIM, which is the Splunk Insider Minicon that Mick has been working hard to put together. Woo! So that'll be exciting. We have a bunch of speakers lined up for that. And then Boss of the SOC is that evening at 6 o'clock in Las Vegas, and also online. You can register for that at bots.splunk.com. We also have three coffee talks the week of Conf, which will be interesting.
By the third one, it's going to be a bourbon talk.
Right. Mm-hmm. We'll have lots of content for you. And then Coffee Talk with Kovar, we're going to have another episode at some point in the future with the threat research team at Splunk.
And we have like 9 Conf talks as well throughout the week. I believe we have a lot of those going as well. So
busy week.
Busy week.
Transitioning now to 60-second charity challenge. This week, our charity of choice is the Audre Lorde Project. This is an LGBT group that's based in New York City. They provide organizing a community, and we chose this charity because June is LGBT Pride Month, and so we wanted to honor that. So, and the topic for this week is actually a pretty interesting one. This is a story out of Wired. They're reporting that Apple is done with passwords. They're done with credentials.
Done with creds.
So starting around September, they're going to, instead of entering a password for your MacBook or kind of like how it is with your phone, you would use a Touch ID or a Face ID. So biometrics instead of a password, which is an interesting concept. So we'll go ahead and take your guys' takes on that in just a second. But first, let's run the clip.
And now, Splunk's Cybersecurity 60-Second Charity Challenge. Remember the rules. You've got to get through an entire subject in 60 seconds, or you donate to today's charity of choice. Good luck!
Okay, so let's go ahead and get started with Mick. Take it away, Mick.
Okay, so I was talking to my good friend, Director Easterly. You may have heard of her. She's the director of CISA, right?
I've heard of her. I've heard of her.
So I was trying to extol the virtues of something I like to call Muppet Factor Authentication. So what this does, much like Apple's move, and Apple, if you're hiring, I'm out here, it gets rid of passwords entirely. We all love Face ID, Touch ID, things like that. And that's going to become more and more common because passwords, no one likes passwords. So we currently have a saying, creds rule everything around me. And if we got rid of those, we're not going to have creds to be stolen. And if there's no creds to be stolen, then we'll all be done. So I think it's a smart move by Apple. I think Google's following suit. I think Microsoft is following suit. And hopefully one day we'll live in a world where we don't need any passwords at all. So like my good friend Director Easterly says, MFA is the way. So be like Director Easterly and MFA your accounts until we don't have passwords.
Well, there we go. That was
pretty good timing.
Yeah, that was dead on 60 seconds. And actually, am I wrong? Was that literally the best one that Mick has ever done?
What's Mac? Not Mick.
Oh, it is Mick. Ooh.
It's Mac.
Hello.
I am curious how you're going to do biometric authentication with those mitts. But
I'm going to borrow Shannon's thumbs.
Yeah.
Just one.
Don't cut my thumbs off, please, Mac.
Not again.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think I'm going to win this time because that was pretty hard to keep up. But I will go through. So last week I did a really manic live tweet thread of the Verizon DBIR where I coined, not Mac, creds rule everything around me, because every single one of the areas that they called out for a breach consistently had creds. I had some great conversations this week where I was talking to folks, and they were really talking about the idea behind breaches. And I don't know if you've noticed this, but as you start looking for things, breaches often seem to have a bit of an immaculate conception of then they logged in, but we're not going to talk about how they logged in because they had legitimate credentials. So this move by Apple, by Microsoft, and other folks to kind of reduce that and just remove that as an area where folks can come in will really change the paradigm for network defenders, because you no longer have and then they magically came into your network. There was a great talk a couple years ago that went something along the lines of, the thesis was, hackers don't hack the cloud, they log into it. If we're able to remove and reduce the amount of creds that are available for people to use, I think the entire world will be safer, and I salute Microsoft and Apple for leading the way on that. Boom.
There you go.
So I believe we have a special guest judge this year.
Yeah, I don't want that responsibility today. So.
Well,
So
that's
Helen,
my
what do you
responsibility.
think?
No, see, the thing, I liked both of these. They're both really, really well presented. The only reason Ryan lost is because he went 1 minute and 3 seconds, and Mac was within the time frame. So Mac won this week.
Yeah, MFA all the way.
Well, if I'm going to donate to a charity, that's a damn good one, so I'm very proud of it. So we are going to now talk about RSA. Now I figured, since we are doing this absolutely 100% live here at RSA. Live. Did we mention live? We are live. Listen, Audra.
It's not. Shh.
We're gonna
Cut
have
that.
to cut that. I mean, no, we can't cut that.
Because we're live. That's right. We're definitely not going to cut that. It's crazy talk.
Crazy talk. Can't cut the future.
So we're live at RSA.
Live at RSA.
Totally live.
And we wanted to go through a little bit of a discussion on our experiences here. You know, I've been coming for 7 years since I've been really part of Splunk. I'd never gone to RSA before, just because I had a little bit of a bias against RSA in terms of the research. There wasn't really great research, in my opinion, that wasn't cryptographical. Now that I was accepted as a speaker, I can say that the quality of the speaking has just gone way up through the roof. But I do feel, from my point of view, if you're someone who's buying software, if you're in a position where you want to talk to a vendor, they literally fly all of us out here. And when I talk to my peers in the industry, we're all here. I can't even think of another, even more than Black Hat. Everyone is here for RSA. And if I have a takeaway from this experience, even if you don't buy a conference pass, vendors will give you an expo floor where you can just walk around and talk to folks, or just show up and go to restaurants, go to bars, make meetings. We are literally here for that. And when I say we, I mean the vendor community. And it is surprisingly worthwhile. You're going to have some really great talks. So that's my takeaway from 7 years of being in the vendor world at RSA. Shannon, you've been going since 1999.
There's like RS, and there was no A.
There was
First
no
off,
A.
it was just A.
Yeah.
So it's
barbecue in the park, and
Was Prince the entertainment? First question. And second, how's it changed since you've been coming?
I think we had Vanilla Ice back then, but it was, it really hasn't changed a lot. That I think a lot of things are still the same. So what's old is new, but it feels the same, but just a lot larger. So I think we are in whatever Moscone Center, whatever,
Right.
South. I don't think there was a North and a South back then. But it feels quite similar, but I'm thinking that it's gone a lot beyond, like you said, just vendor land, that you still have a lot of these. The most valuable thing I find is catching up with other people at these things. And like you said, everybody's here.
Yep.
So that's great.
Okay. Mick, you're you've gone to a couple, but
my
first one
experience
as a vendor.
Right, first one as a vendor, and I've first time working in the booth. It's been an incredible experience. It's been really, really fun. My experience with the RSA historically has been mixed, though, because as someone in the federal government without purchasing authority, it's a lonely time at RSA. Right. So it's never really been appealing to me. But now, to Shannon's point, what's old is new, and what's new has an X in front of it. I think that's the new thing. My biggest takeaway is I don't know what XDR, X Riot, or whatever. I don't understand it, and that was my takeaway. There's a lot more that we see. But again, all the vendors we met, super awesome. The colleagues we've seen out here, like if you are working at a private sector company, odds are you're at RSA this week.
The good news is I happen to know Drew Church is an expert just off camera in XDR, and he will be able to inform you of all the exciting things you need to know.
That sounds exciting. Audra, what about you?
What about you, Audrey?
You like that? That's all day.
Well, this was my first ever RSA, and it's been an experience, definitely, especially with COVID and seeing everyone in person again, especially in a big room full of people. It's been great to have that in-person interaction and just meet a lot of people who I'd seen online but hadn't had a chance to talk to them in person. That's been great. And I also did booth duty with Mix, so that was a lot of fun as well. I've been learning more about Splunk products just from doing the demos.
You're still pretty new to the company.
Yeah,
so
and talking to customers. So that was a good learning experience for me. And I also, probably the highlight so far of RSA for me was I talked with Danielle Jablanski, and she's at Nozomi Networks. So we had a quick interview, and I want to go ahead and toss to that.
You mean you were talking to her right now?
Oh, right, because we're
live.
So I'm going to go ahead and toss to myself then. Yeah? Okay.
Yep.
Over to me. Hi, everyone. Joining me today is Danielle Jablanski. She is an OT cybersecurity specialist at Nozomi Networks. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be a part of the Splunk team for a couple of minutes.
Yes, we're at the Splunk booth at RSA, and it is a very busy day. A lot of people.
Yep.
What are your thoughts so far?
My eyes are taped open. You can't see it. It's covered with makeup, but it's a wild ride. I was here in 2020, and you never realize how many people you don't know in person until you spend 2 years on Twitter and get hugged by strangers. So it's been really lovely to be back in person, to see everybody, and to have some really integral conversations with folks.
Yeah, what are you looking forward to the most while you're here?
So we were actually just talking about this little sidebar. I'm excited that ICS is finally on the map, right? Industrial control systems, we know they're important. We know that they, functionally, we depend on them for society across the board, but we get really overwhelmed by them in context. And I think there are a lot of great vendors here and a lot of good presenters that can break down the problem set so we begin to understand and digest and build this path forward where ICS and OT had been kind of on the fringes of the big cybersecurity affairs for many years. So I'm really happy it's having its moment.
Yeah, I think Colonial Pipeline especially was a big wake-up call just for the nation, people that maybe weren't plugged into ICS and vulnerabilities with that. So what has that ride been like for you ever since that happened? Has that been more of a talking point with people in your industry?
It has been, yes. So the revelation for me with Colonial was the amount of really heavy-hitting IT security professionals that didn't know before that incident that you didn't actually have to impact operational technology to shut down an operational environment, right? A process or a production facility, you can name a bunch of different typesets of environments. So that to me was really eye-opening because I understood that from my base, but we hadn't translated it well for the majority of people that focus on technology, right? OT is a tiny, tiny group. So we've not been doing a good job in our own ecosystems of actually, demonstrating the need to spread awareness about operational technology and why it's so important to understand it, to build, compensating controls around legacy systems and things we rely on for electricity and water and all of those things. So that was the aha moment for me. And then, for our panel tomorrow, which I know this will probably happen after the fact, I wrote the headline and the context for that, and it's this approach where IT folks and enterprise people typically think about the CIA triad. They think about confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and that's their baseline, right? For us, there's a crown jewel, a valve, a reactor, right? A bridge. It could be anything operational that is your crown jewel. Data doesn't not matter, but it's not the priority. And so those are the conversations we're starting to see. Like people understanding, wow, it's not about access to data. It's about having this thing not malfunction, not be manipulated, not be coerced in any way, shape, or form. And then it's like sky's the limit when people kind of have that aha moment. So that's what I really love.
That's great, especially understanding your environment and then prioritizing, identifying the crown jewels, all of that. So
and not
important.
Creating like a false narrative that it's either or, but having people like reach across the aisle, for lack of a better term, to like have that conversation finally, because forever it was really siloed.
Right. So, and tell me a little bit about your career journey, how you got to where you are today, and did you know you wanted to work in OT, and was that an interest for you, or?
So I started out studying international security. I was a big Middle East, geopolitics, Arabic student. I studied abroad quite a bit, and then when I left grad school, that was a really saturated field at the time. And so I actually took a job in nuclear weapons research, doing cybersecurity vulnerabilities for nuclear command and control systems. We focused on a couple of different technologies, but I really found my home in the jargon and like vernacular of cybersecurity, and other people noticed that I had picked it up pretty well. And so I was poached from that to come to Stanford actually for 2 years. So I lived here in the Bay Area, and I helped to launch the cyber policy program there. But that group really focused a lot on disinformation campaigns and the information ecosystem, which wasn't not interesting for me, but from coming from nuclear to information operations, I really missed things that go boom in the real world, like the bells and the whistles and all of the control systems and the functionality. It's fascinating to me and it's really fun. So when I left Stanford, I was an analyst for a little while, focused on intrusion detection for industrial control systems, and then I was poached by one of the vendors that does security in that space. So it's this really roundabout journey. But I joke with people that nuclear weapons are really one of the original operational technologies.
Yeah.
We just don't think about it that way because it's a weapon system. So a lot of the things that we grapple with in terms of supply chain security, like nuclear weapons specialists and security people have really figured that out, right? They're able to throw a lot more money at it than the average, utility.
Exactly.
But the conversations, I know how to have those. So that's what really drew me back in. So.
Yeah, and it's definitely very important work too, especially with nuclear weapons.
Good mission set.
You want to make sure that security is locked down.
Yeah.
So, well, awesome. Thank you so much for joining us for this interview, and I hope to see you around RSA. I know there's a ton of people, a lot to do, but I appreciate you taking the time. And
thank you. I can't wait to get to know you more and the Splunk team. You guys do great work, and we're happy to be partnered with you, and we love you guys.
Well, thank you.
And we're back live.
What a fantastic interview that was live.
Yeah, back to me, from me. It's great.
Back to you from me. So we've talked about RSA. We've gone over some exciting things for the stories. And then we're going to be all over this next week. So as we said, join us next week for 3 separate LinkedIn Lives where we'll be doing coffee talk, bourbon talk, and then shots talk is probably my expectation because we're going to be tired. In fact, we're going to be so tired after all the work we've done for ransomware, these conferences, we're going to take a bit of a July off. So we'll be taking a very soft July. We won't be doing any LinkedIn Lives, but we will be coming back for Black Hat, which we're all very excited by. And we'll also be very sad because our beloved producer, Drew Church, will be doing some time away serving his country. We're very happy for him, but he'll be desperately missed. So if it comes back and it looks really unprofessional, you will know 100% why. Drew, we support you. We love you. Thank you for everything you're doing for us and everyone else. But with that, we are going away. Drew, take us away.